Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Demystify Selling with Microsoft. And I'm super excited for my repeat guest and friend, Grant Melstand. Or Stead, sorry, Grant.
Oh, you're good. Yeah, Melstead. It's a
Yeah,
fun one to say. We've heard it all. Majelstead, Jelstead, you name it. So those darn Norwegians, adding J's into the last names.
right. It's us Irish. We make it easy for everybody.
Right.
That's funny. So, again, welcome back. I'm super excited for our conversation today. But for those that don't know you, maybe you could take just a moment and introduce yourself, your role at Microsoft, and a little bit about your background.
Definitely. Yeah, so I'm a modern workplace security specialist here at Microsoft. So our internal title would be SSP, again, in the security space. But
Mhm.
really, when you think about Microsoft 365, obviously a very vast platform solution that we have. Again, really, most of my focus is on the security and compliance side, but I'm with the SMC organization,
Yeah.
and of that organization specifically, I work in the public sector, so state and local governments.
Right. And for those that don't know, maybe you could just define SMC for us.
Yeah, so SMC, small, medium, corporate. I mean, you think of we've got our top enterprise accounts, and we have SMC in the middle, and then SMB in the bottom. Um, all the customers that I have aligned account managers. They have aligned solution specialists in all the different product areas, whether it's modern work, Azure, Dynamics. So it's that managed customer set within Microsoft.
Right. And so you have your peers that would be on the technical side for each of those different sort of verticals like modern work. You focus on security, but Azure and that.
Exactly.
Yeah, the SLG, which is public sector. Um, but one of the things that I've noticed in my career in selling with Microsoft is that SMC, people think, oh, small. Well, I've worked with accounts that are thousands of seats inside of Microsoft in the SMC group specifically. So, I caution partners that, just because you think you're working in the small to medium, I mean, the accounts are still pretty large.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, indeed. I think that I don't even know why small is a part of it because
It's a good
yeah,
question, actually. As I'm saying it, I'm thinking about, hey, really, they just could drop the small.
right, exactly.
Uh,
But yeah, I mean, I would say that there's a pretty decent spread of I would say majority of customers that I work with are probably between at least over 500
yeah,
users in an organization, but there's a handful that I have that are up at that 6 7 thousand 6 to 7 thousand seat range.
right.
um, and the thing is too, Rob, like SMC really is the scale kind of arm of Microsoft. So
Yeah.
I have 90 customers that I'm aligned with. So when you think, hey, 90 customers, if they're all in that, let's say, couple thousand seat range, I mean, it's still a large set of seats, right? That I work with, have opportunity to upsell, things like that.
Yeah. And what's fascinating to me is, I mean, you have 90 customers, but you also have 90 customers that you have to inform all the different security products. I mean, you think about the breadth of products in the Microsoft security stack, it is massive. So, I mean, partners really do have to play a part in your motion, I would suspect.
Oh yeah, indeed. I mean, when you think about it, like I can meet with one customer, right, at any given time, assuming it's not like a multi-customer briefing or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's a limited amount of everybody has a limited amount of time, right? So it's like, hey, having great partners in my back pocket to help me with pre-sales, help with education, because to your point, the ecosystem is very vast, very wide, and we're constantly rolling out new products, new features. So just helping customers be aware of like what's the art of the possible.
Yeah.
Are they utilizing their investment today that they've made with Microsoft? And then hopefully there's some opportunities to expand and take on other capabilities as you build out the relationship, establish the trust.
Yeah, no, I love that. Well, great. Thanks for sharing that kind of your background about you and SMC. And there's really three things I want to talk about today. And so, I want to get into some of the changes you've seen in FY25 whether that be in the programs or your focus areas is the first thing. Then I'd really like to talk about Copilot. I mean, everybody and all partners are talking about it. I think all customers are interested in it. And then wrap up with what it takes to sell in the sort of SLG space or the public sector space. Those are really the three key things I'd like to touch on today. And so maybe we can start on what you're seeing in FY25 as focus areas or big changes from last year.
Sure. I think that like there's some small nuances, some changes, that have happened over the fiscal year. I would say that they're far less than we saw from fiscal year 23 to 24, right?
Yeah.
The previous set of years. Um, but I think the big takeaways and like the go forward motions are, of course, the Microsoft XDR story, right? So we've
Mhm.
got a really competitive landscape in our EDR solution. We've got really, strong competitors in the market, with our SIEM solution that we have in Azure Sentinel. So I think that the security compliance landscape as a whole is obviously the area that I'm most focused in.
Yeah.
Um, but it's something that if organizations are really going to take advantage of generative AI or just AI in general, right,
Mhm.
across an organization, like you really need to have kind of a platform approach, a centralized approach of, where is our data? How are we protecting it? How are we, classifying, labeling, making sure that it's not overexposed, things like that.
Yeah.
So, again, this will probably kind of bleed into your second question about Copilot, but like especially in the public sector, as we're preparing and getting ready for that, it's just never been more important to really have those security compliance conversations with customers to make sure that they feel good about where we're going, and then obviously like their end users can get value out of the products that are coming out.
I love that. And it makes me think about, the concept of a solution play. Microsoft has a number of different solution plays internally. And one of the things that, I realized when I was selling with Microsoft was when I came to the table with a solution play. So, we're talking about EDR and XDR here. If I came to the table saying to you, Grant, I've got this approach I like to take with customers and this journey I like to take them on. That there was a lot of value I found in that, and I'd love to get your take on that. I mean, does the concept of a solution play resonate from your perspective, and the feedback on how you see partners execute against those solution plays?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of value, and I think where it really starts is like when partners have embraced kind of that methodology, they have the framework set up, they have the roadmap of, hey, here's kind of the beginning, here's the middle, here's the end state. Really what I see it helps me specifically, and I would say most of the Microsoft sales folks and reps are going to agree, is that it really helps us in like that pre-sales process. And
Right.
that's what, like, you know as much as I like to think that all my customers love to, get emails from Grant and they're always going to take a meeting for Grant. And anytime the Microsoft, you know, pops into emails or phones or, hey, picking up the phone, excited to call me, like that's obviously not the case. I mean, people are busy. They've got, conflicting priorities that are going on, things that are, taking up a lot of their time. So having, strong partners to, again, help tell the story, help
Yeah.
sell the solution play, and then give customers like a roadmap of crawl, walk, run. Here's where we start. Here's where we get you to, and then hey, if it's one time engagement, they're off on their own, great. But I think where you can have the most success is you establish that relationship, you build the rapport, you have success, and then that opens the door for other opportunities down the road.
Right, right. That really reminds me of the Microsoft customer engagement model, or what the Microsoft refers to as MSAM, is really doing exactly what you talked about. It's taking them from that sort of crawl space all the way through the journey to the place where you're optimizing and managing and then continuing that loop. So I love that. And I think that I'm sure you've seen partners that are good at it and partners that aren't. It really does make a difference for you, I imagine.
Oh, indeed, indeed.
Great. Well, with that, let's talk a little bit about Copilot. So you're in this unique space where Microsoft released Copilot to the world, except for the people that didn't have access to it, like the public sector. And, how is that changing now? Are you seeing that change? And are we seeing the public organizations like smaller governments start to dip their toe in the Copilot water? I'd love to get your feedback on that.
Yeah. So I mean, the big thing and why, there's a whole bunch of Copilots, right? We've got
Mhm.
Copilot for M365, we've got it for sales, we've got it for security. So
Yeah,
this Copilot umbrella, right, is Microsoft's kind of generative AI, um, you know, term to the market. Now, government organizations really are typically in our GCC, government community cloud environment.
yeah,
Um, all the services that we bring to market go through additional vetting, go through additional, it really goes through the FedRAMP audit
right.
for our government customers to be able to use. So, like you said, it came out commercially. It still isn't available to GCC quite yet, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. I think a recent blog that was just published here, I think it was on August 20th, if I recall, had stated that October is hopefully or expected to be the green light
Yeah,
time or month of when that solution is going to be available for GCC clients. So really, like to your point, there's been a lot of talk, a lot of excitement, and really where we see it mainly coming from is from end users, people
yeah,
in organizations that like. I mean, even we were advertising about Copilot, obviously on television, YouTube ads, you name it. I mean, there's just been all kinds of buzz and marketing around Copilot. And that's always been a frustration point from GCC clients that they say, man, you guys never put like a little asterisk or, hey, anybody in the government space, you can't use this yet. Um, so seeing that, this is going to be available to public sector, it's going to obviously make a big impact for end user efficiencies, hopefully just, creating a better kind of quality of life, right? When you just think
yeah,
of like tasks that folks do throughout the day, it's going to be really neat, to see what those individuals are going to be able to do.
yeah.
Um, and like I said, I mean, what we've been talking about is really in that kind of preparation phase of like, how do you
Right.
prepare your environment to interact with the solution? How do you keep it safe, secure, things like that?
Well, I think that's such an important discussion right now. I mean, especially in the government sector, where you really have to have your ducks in a row in terms of security to protect that data. Both the data, the identities, the intellectual property, all those things. And so I'd imagine that that's a real big top of mind issue for your customers now. Is how do we get prepared for Copilot? We
Hmm.
know it's coming, and Microsoft is, I think it's going to be there, and when is the question. But there's so
Right.
much to do now.
Yeah. I mean, the preparation piece is huge.
Mhm.
Um, and, it's, I think a lot of folks are worried about, the exfiltration of data. They're thinking about DLP.
Yeah,
I think something that, we talk about a lot is even just kind of the insider risk perspective of it,
yeah,
where, we want to make sure that your information isn't overshared across the organization. Because
hmm,
if it is, right, it's very easily for folks to start asking just basic questions, prompting basic questions, and are
yeah,
going to get a variety of answers back. So there's, a lot of things that we can do initially with like SharePoint restricted search, and you can decide like, hey, what are we going to allow Copilot to have access to?
yeah.
Um, but of course, we know that like the more data, the more information that the tools have access to, typically the more valuable, relatable they're going to be.
Absolutely. And I think, it makes me think about, as organizations are starting to build on top of Copilot and leveraging Copilot Studio and different APIs to access different data, it's really going to become a much larger issue in my mind to protect that data. From Copilot, where does a great job right out of the box.
Yeah.
But as we get more mature, I see more development happening, and
Yeah.
Azure OpenAI and all those other areas. So it'll be a lot of fun to watch, and it'll be really interesting to see which partners step up to the plate with you.
Right. Well, I think it's really interesting, even going back to some of the security and compliance side of things. We've had a lot of conversations, and we really go toe to toe in that EDR space that we talked about, right? And
Yeah.
even last year, that was a lot of my focus. Still a lot of the focus this year, but really something I think that's changed, or what's really perked folks' ears again, is Purview, right?
Right.
And our ability to really look holistically across an organization of how do you manage your data, not only in your M365 environment, but how do you manage it where it sits on premise, where it sits in Azure or other clouds, AWS, GCP,
Yeah.
and then even if you are potentially using other flavors of generative AI, whether it's ChatGPT or Google Bard, like you name it, you can use Purview to help keep those types of tools,
Mhm.
kind of have some guide rails up even for those third-party tools. So of course, Microsoft would love to have you on our platform. We'd love to have you use our solution, but we
Right.
know there's scenarios where, hey, there's going to be third parties that are involved. We still want to make sure that obviously your organization is safe and secure.
Right. And I think that's really powerful when you start to think about the fact that your data, wrapped in Purview, really, no matter what tool you leverage to deliver the end result, you're still, you can rest assured that that data has been wrapped and protected, even if you are using those third party products, and it's there to defend you against or protect you against that data getting out into the wild through maybe
Exactly.
no fault of anybody's, other than that AI
Right.
continued to learn and grow on the information that it's collecting. And all of a sudden it's, drifting a little bit to the right or to the left. And now all of a sudden you're like, wait.
Exactly. Yeah.
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 Fantastic. Well, let's, what I'd like to do is kind of wrap up with the last question, which is, partners. A lot of times I'll talk to partners and they'll be like, well, I want to also sell into, city government or state government. And, you touched on FedRAMP, and I assume state ramp is closely tied there. And, I'd love to hear from you what partners need to be thinking about if they're considering selling in the public sector. Because I know firsthand, it's not just, oh, yeah, I can do that over in commercial and go over here too. So,
Sure. So yeah, I mean, I think there's obviously some product differences when you think
mhm,
of our commercial offerings versus our GCC environments. Um, they've gotten a lot better in feature parity over the years,
yeah,
and I think this Copilot launch is hopefully a good sign of like we're making progress at trying to make these things be again equal in a more timely fashion than maybe we have in the past. But I think having that understanding of there's going to be some nuances, there's going to be some differences in the product, specifically from commercial to GCC is important. But then I think another thing that like maybe gets overlooked is even just like ways to procure services. A lot of
right,
government organizations, um, purchase off of cooperative agreements. They've got, pre-negotiated things that are in place. They've got, just ways where it's maybe more difficult to approach a government organization and win business if you haven't worked with them before, or if you're not familiar with, just kind of the landscape of how they purchase, how they procure. So
right.
that's where I would say I've seen in the past, um, just little hiccups or roadblocks where it's like, hey, if you're not a part of that, or you're not familiar with, this program, this cooperative agreement, it's just more difficult for them to be able to work with those folks, right?
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point, and it's something from my past that I remember really struggling with as I was making that transition was just understanding contracting vehicles and how governments and different governments work through different vehicles, and so it really can be complex. And then the other thing I noticed is, and at that time was it was not programs I could leverage in the commercial space didn't always apply in the state local government space. So there may have
Hmm.
been funding available in commercial, but wasn't available in the SLG space. So I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's something that partners need to be aware of is that programs can be different as well inside of Microsoft.
Yeah, no, indeed. I mean, I would say the best thing to do, like if you find yourself in that space where, hey, you want to work with, public sector, you've uncovered opportunities. Best thing you can do, right, is just find out who the Microsoft folks are, because
Right.
we're happy to align with the correct program, the right funding vehicle, assessment, whatever it is,
Yeah.
because those are the things that can really help us drive towards a yes, right,
Yeah.
from a sales perspective. And to your point earlier, like that's how we scale, that's how we create large impact, is by not just always having it be, Grant, our internal team, but it's,
Sure.
using our wide array of partners that we have out there to help us go close business and win opportunities.
Well, I love that, Grant. As always, I appreciate our conversations. I mean, you always bring so much insight. So thank you for that. And is it fair to say if people want to connect with you, LinkedIn is the best way to do that?
Yeah, definitely go ahead and follow me on LinkedIn, send direct messages. Happy to connect, talk with folks. So that would definitely be the best way.
Great. And I know you run a podcast called The Cloud Connect. So if people haven't followed you on LinkedIn, do that, but also connect and subscribe to Grant's podcast, which I think can be found on YouTube. Is that,
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah,
great.
we've got it hooked up to LinkedIn Live, YouTube, and really the big thing with that is we're just trying to share information.
Yeah,
Again, like I talked about, ecosystems are changing, expanding, growing. There's always new feature sets coming out.
yeah,
So just kind of giving that, 30,000 foot view of, hey, here's things coming out. Here's the business value prop of what's going on. And then I've got a really great colleague who's in our unified support organization that does that with me.
yeah.
Super bright guy. So, we have fun and we get guests on every once in a while to talk about different topics and keep it pretty casual.
Nice, nice. You got the smart one and you got the one with the fancy background. I
That's right.
love
That's
it. I
right.
love it. So, well, Grant, thanks again. I really appreciate your time and I look